queens, all along, yeah, queens, all along, ooh, queens, all along, powerful queens, all along,
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Queens on the Road podcast. This is Latavia here, and we have a special surprise for you guys today. I have a king on, and he's my very best friend, Louis. Hey Louis, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, Latavia?
It's going good. So, since this is your first time on the podcast, let everyone know a little bit about yourself.
So yes, my name is Louis. I live in the Bronx, born and raised. I go to college. I have one more class to get my bachelor's, and I work in a high school.
That is awesome. We are out here doing our thing. I love it. So today I brought you on because I wanted to talk about what it was like being ably different going to school. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's roll. So, Louis, what was elementary school like?
Elementary school was fine for me. I have cerebral palsy, spastic quadriplegia, which affects all four of my limbs, and I'm pretty much tight all the time. So unlike Latavia, I do take medication that helps relieve some of the tightness. So elementary school was fine from what I remember.
Well, that's interesting, Louis, because I hated the medicine to make your muscles loose. I feel like I can't function. I've mentioned that before. And my elementary school experience was okay. I would say it had its ups and downs because whenever I started school, I was always a pioneer. So I was always the first one to go through the program. And I did general education, but I was under the umbrella of special education, so they would give me the special education services I needed, but I was still in a general education classroom. Keep in mind, this was back in the 90s and the 2000s, guys, so things have changed a lot now. But elementary school was okay. It had its ups and downs. As my mom alluded to in the last episode, she talked about my first day of kindergarten. So I'm going to give my perspective on it. So we were rolling into this big auditorium with all these people in there, and a teacher yelling down saying special ed is downstairs. I heard whispers and parents saying, is that girl going to be in my son's class? Is that girl going to be in my daughter's class? And I was like, Mom, they don't want me here. So Mom was like, that's okay. This is where you belong, and this is where you're going to stay, and everything will be all right. So I remember when I started the kindergarten class, it was interesting. You know, at first the kids were standoffish, which I can understand why children would be standoffish. They've never seen anybody that's different, you know. And then the teachers were a little apprehensive because I guess they didn't really know how to teach me. So that was interesting. But eventually when they began to see that I was intelligent just like everyone else in the class, and I actually was doing better than the other students in the class, I became like the little teacher helper, and I would help the students in the class. So that made the parents feel a lot more comfortable with me being in there.
So that's wild. Our school memories are kind of different. I don't remember students or parents looking at me different. I knew I was different because I was the only one in the wheelchair. But the teachers used to help me like transfer to the mat and everything. And this is first and second grade. But they were really nice to me. The reason I think I went to a different school in third grade was because someone told my mom about it. And she felt that it would be more inclusive and I would feel more like at home, if you will. From third grade to high school, I stayed in that school, and it was mostly a good experience.
Yeah, I would say I had some more bumps in elementary school. Like, I remember I had this one para. I told her I wanted to be a doctor, and she literally told me, you can't be a doctor because you're in a wheelchair. So I came home. I remember coming home, and I was like, Mom, my parent told me I can't be a doctor because I'm in a wheelchair. And my mom was like, don't you let anybody tell you what you can and cannot be. You could be a doctor if you want to. I'm going to have to call that school. I would say middle school was when school became hell, honestly.
So why was it hell in middle school?
It was hell because I got bullied on all fronts. So the kids in class would bully me, and then the adults were very mean. I remember my whole 6th and 7th grade years, the kids in the classroom couldn't stand me, and I didn't really understand why initially. But what I found out later was there was these 2 cute boys, like the popular boys in school, and instead of liking the girls in the class that would throw themselves at them, they liked me. And so I became a target. The girls wanted to push me down the stairs.
Oh, they became haters.
Big haters. Big haters. So, but I don't think that was like the worst of it for me because, kids are going to be kids. So that's generally what happens. It was mostly the adults. Teachers would say, I don't know how to teach you. My parents would want to put their names on my papers. My mom gave that story the last episode too, because they felt like because they were writing for me, they did the work. I didn't do the work. Even though I would tell them what I needed them to do, they just felt like, oh, you're not doing the work, I'm doing the work, so I get to put my name on the paper.
I can't believe they try to take credit for your work.
Yeah, I don't think it was so much taking credit for the work as much as they just felt it was too much for them to try to educate me in general ed because I needed a lot of supportive services. So I needed a special chair to sit in when I was in the classroom. So I needed to be transferred in and out of the chair. I needed a scribe, which is a person to write for me. I needed mask and markers, which is just basically, in order for me to do math, I needed things highlighted in different colors so I could see. So I just basically needed a lot of support. I needed extra time on tests. I needed frequent breaks.
And they wouldn't provide any of these services?
They did, but they just felt like I would have been better supported if I was in special education. Because, in special education, that's where you're supposed to get all the services, or according to them. So it was like, oh, we don't provide this in general ed, and if she needs all of that, then she needs to go to special ed. But my mom was like, no, her intellect is fine, so she belongs in a regular classroom. You just need to give her the services that she needs to be successful. There's nothing wrong with that. So, yeah, middle school was hell. I remember having an occupational therapist that would always equate me having CP to her mom having a stroke. And that's how she wanted to treat me, as if I was a stroke patient. And I kept trying to tell her, like, it's completely 2 different things. It was just a lot going on. I remember, I also had asthma too. So I remember when I needed to go to the nurse because I was having an asthma attack, my parent thought I was faking. And she wouldn't take me to the nurse. So I had to roll myself, because at this time I didn't have a power chair, I had a manual chair. I had to roll myself to the nurse's office because she wouldn't take me. It was just a lot. Story time. I remember one day I was sitting in class Everybody was getting ready to settle down, come in, and my para was like, take off your jacket by yourself.
What?
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I need help. And she was like, I don't care. The occupational therapist said you need to learn how to do this on your own. So take off your jacket. And at this time, all the students were coming in. And this was when they were really making fun of me and really didn't like me. So she made me struggle to take off my coat. And when I say struggle, I mean struggle to take off my coat. And all the kids made fun of me.
I bet they were doing what a lot of kids do with people in wheelchairs. They stare a lot.
And they were just laughing like, oh, haha, you can't take off your own coat. And it was embarrassing. I think from that day forth, I didn't want to go back to school. So I started telling my mom, like, oh, I'm sick. I don't really want to go to school. I don't feel well. And, of course, everyone knows my mom. And if you don't know, now you know. She knew I was faking. So she was like, oh, no. This school is not going to kill my daughter's spirit to learn. She has to come up out of here. But that story was just the straw that broke the camel's back, because even during that time, when I came into that school, I was reading above my grade level. I was reading on 7th grade level in the 6th grade at the time. So they began to tell her, oh, she's doing below grade level work. She can't hack the work. Now, mind you, like I said before, I was a nerd in school. So my mom really didn't believe it. So that incident was only the straw that broke the camel's back. And what she did after that was ask for an impartial hearing.
And what exactly is an impartial hearing?
So an impartial hearing, it's like an annual review for a progress report. If people don't know what that is, it's basically when everybody meets for the individualized education plan, and they tell their parents and the service providers for the child, they come together and they say whether they're making progress or not, and what are the new goals for their new IEP. So that's basically how an impartial hearing goes, where everybody comes together and they reconvene and talk about the IEP. But what they didn't know is that my mom had called the state representative to come in. And this state representative had been following me since kindergarten. So she came in the meeting and she was like, you know what? Enough is enough. Latavia has been going through a lot since kindergarten. Where do you want to put her, Miss McMillan? And my mom said she needs to go to Henry Viscardi School. So that is where I ended up, in the middle of 7th grade at Henry Viscardi. So that is where Lewis and I actually met. It's fun fact time. And the fun fact is that initially Lewis and I didn't like each other. But keep in mind, we were middle schoolers. So we rode on the same bus together, and Lewis always liked to sleep. While I was a chatty Cathy, I always liked to talk on the bus ride home. So I didn't like him because I felt he was rude, because the way he would tell me to be quiet is to shut up. And he felt that I was too much of a chatty Cathy. But you know what's funny is, look at us now. We are like the best of friends, and I couldn't ask for a better friend. So, Lewis, how was your experience at HVS?
HVS eventually became a home away from home.
Why do you say eventually?
Because, starting out there in 3rd grade, academically I was doing fine, but socially I was just really shy to getting to know everybody. So I didn't know what a bus room was. I thought that was actually the room that they called the bathroom. I remember one day I asked if I could go to the bus room because I needed to use the bathroom, but they looked at me confused. It was just a very socially awkward time. I eventually made friends, and I actually enjoyed getting up early in the morning to actually go to school. I can't say the same about when I was in public school.
going to HBS was like a breath of fresh air for me because I got to actually do different things and actually get to go on trips, because when I was in middle school I couldn't go on trips. They would always say they didn't have any busing and I couldn't get to where I needed to go because of that, and the kids would make fun of me in my class. So what my mom would have to do is she would have to make sure I went on a better trip than them. Like I would have to go to Florida or something, so that when they told me the next day in school that they went to Six Flags, I could say, oh, well, I went to Florida and we had a good time over the weekend and things like that. So going to HBS was actually a breath of fresh air because I finally got to have like a really authentic school experience. So I really, really enjoyed that and loved that. We got to go to prom. We got to do senior trip. We got to do many different trips throughout the years. So it was great, and I just felt like I was finally in a place where I belong.
Yeah, and there was a lot of other programs like Friday Night Rec, where we would stay late in the school. On Fridays, there would be basketball. You could go play with computers. They also had the Independence Living House, which is pretty cool, where you learn how to live independently.
Yeah, I loved all that different stuff. It was a really great experience. So now we're transitioning into college. College was a nightmare for me, but how was it for you, Louis?
It was different. I wasn't used to going to different buildings for each class. I can't say it was horrible. I mean, they accommodated me, so I didn't really have a negative experience. The late classes were a struggle for me, so I only had one late class and I had to drop it quickly because I also used Accessoride, and my class would end at 10 o'clock and Accessoride would come around 11:30. So that was horrible for me.
Wait, so you mean you had Stress-A-Ride? Because you know Accessoride never comes on time for anything.
Yes, Stress-A-Ride. I'm so glad that I barely even use them anymore.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Well, my college experience was a nightmare. But I do know that for some people in HBS that stayed there for a long time, from like 3rd to 12th grade, felt some anxiety about going to college.
I don't think I had anxiety because right after I graduated high school, I actually had a surgery. So I started college a little later. But when I did start, I was excited. I wanted to start my journey in college and see where I went. I had no idea what exactly I wanted to do, but yeah, just was excited to get started.
So yeah, that's interesting because I was talking to my friend Lauren. Hey Lauren! And she was telling me that she went into HVAS in the 3rd grade. Before that, she was in public school, and she stayed in HVAS from 3rd all the way to 12th grade. So when it was time for her to transition into college, she felt a little bit of anxiety because, you know, when going to HVS, you have that one-on-one attention and individual academics. So when she got to college, you no longer have that. You kind of have to fend for yourself. So she was a little bit nervous, and she struggled the first year academically because she didn't have that one-on-one individual attention. But after the first year, she got used to it and it was easier. So it is a bit of a juggle. So it's pretty interesting. I never felt like I struggled in college in that aspect, because I will say being in general ed and then transitioning to HVS, it was kind of easy for me because I assimilated in both areas, right? So I was with able-bodied people and then I was with ably different people. So I never felt like an outcast or different because I was able to commingle with both groups. So it never felt different to me, or I never had anxiety about college in that way. I think my anxiety came from just like what everybody feels, right? We're so used to going to school and getting that help. Mm-hmm. And now college, you're like independent and got to do everything on your own. So that was my anxiety.
Yeah, I will admit, now that you say that, that independent was definitely new. Like, I was not used to taking notes while the teacher professor, while they were teaching. And I don't know, when I started, I would pretty much lose them because they would keep lecturing, and I'd be like still starting my notes. So eventually, I had to adapt and start recording every lecture, and that helped me. So that part was a struggle.
See, that's where we're different because in college, I went into it, and college is a little bit different because when you go in there, they want to see your IEP. So they want to see that individualized education plan to see what services you got, but they don't have to give you those services.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, when I started college, this word pioneer just keeps coming up. But when I started college, my undergrad year, I was also a pioneer there. So at first, they didn't really want to give me the services, and that's why I say college was like an experience from hell. They didn't want to give me the services, and I had to fight for those services because they were like, well, you don't look like you need them, so I think you could manage in the class without them. And I'm like, I need these services to be successful. So I had a scribe, I had a note taker, I had extra time on tests, but it wasn't easy to get that. I think they really need to change the laws and possibly mandate that we get those services because they were very useful to me throughout school. So I didn't have anxiety about note taking because I would turn on my recorder and then I would get note takers for the class. But why didn't you use those services? Because I know initially you had them.
So I did have those services. I just didn't feel like I had to use them. Like I didn't even use my extra time during exams. I actually started using the extra time during exams when COVID started. But in class, I don't know if I didn't feel like I needed them. I used the extra time once for an exam because I figured it was going to be a long exam. I had double time. I don't know why. I just never used it.
Yeah, I used it all the time. It had got to a point where I also felt like if I didn't use it, because they didn't have to give it to me, I wouldn't get the services. So I used it to the best of my ability because I did have this one professor that said, oh, well, sometimes you finish my test before everyone else. I don't think you need it anymore, so I'm not going to give it to you. So because it could easily be taken away from you and you had to fight for it, I just always used it.
Yeah, so they could say, like, if you don't use it, then you don't need it.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
But you can't determine for me what I'm going to need or not need. So it was just a whole advocating experience once again, but a whole different level because now I had to advocate for myself, by myself, you know? Like, mom was still there to guide me, but she couldn't speak up for me anymore. I had to speak up for myself. So undergrad was interesting because, once again, I was a pioneer. And graduate school was very interesting.
Why was graduate school interesting?
Graduate school was interesting because I was a pioneer once again. And I was the first person who was ably different and in a wheelchair to go into their speech-language pathology program. So they didn't know how to navigate or how they had to modify the program for me so that I could fully participate. So it had its ups and downs. They tried, but they just didn't have the knowledge. So I remember when I initially started grad school, they had this wheelchair lift that was made to lift up regular manual chairs. And when I first initially rode on it, it could not lift my custom-made power chair up. So I remember going to the disability service office and asking them to replace the wheelchair lift so that it could accommodate all types of wheelchairs. And they initially didn't want to do it. So what happened was, he said, I need to see if it works for you or not. So he had two ladies from another academic department and himself come out, and they watched if the wheelchair lift was accommodating for me. And once they realized that it didn't work, they agreed to order another wheelchair lift that can accommodate all types of wheelchairs. But I remember when I was initially talking to him about it, he said, why do you have to have a custom-made wheelchair? Why can't you just use a regular wheelchair that everybody else uses? And there was moments where if it was broken, I couldn't see my clients. And at first, they wanted to lower my grade because of that, because their policy was if you were there, you needed to see your client. And so I remember one time my professor was like, okay, well, we're going to have to reduce your grade. And I was like, what? Why? Because you wasn't able to see your client. I said, yeah, but I wasn't able to see my client due to no fault of my own. They did a lot of unfair things, but again, it was because they really just didn't know how to navigate it and really didn't know what to do. I also remember one time when it was time to go out to do clinicals, because now you had to go in different areas. They didn't really have a lot of places for me that was handicap accessible. So I had to find clinicals of my own, which I only had a very limited clinical experience because I was only able to go to my old preschool, which was United Cerebral Palsy, and back to another clinic where I used to have speech language therapy. So that was interesting in itself. Academically, I was fine. It was just
the accessibility.
The accessibility part. They had to get automatic doors because at this point I was going to college by myself, so I was traveling by bus, and they had these big heavy doors in the building you could not open, and sometimes the security guard wasn't sitting at the desk. So I said, well, if you guys can get automatic doors, then I can open up the doors by myself. That was a struggle, and they didn't want to get automatic doors because they were like, we don't have it in the budget. So I had to fight them and go to the ombudsman to get automatic doors, and eventually they did it. But it was just, imagine having to do your studies and make sure you maintain a B+ average, because the speech language pathology major is a lot, and you have to maintain a good GPA to even stay in the program. So imagine having to do well academically, then do well on your clinicals on the outside, and then having to deal with accessibility issues, right? It was just a lot because I had to juggle 3 things at one time and make sure I was great at doing it all.
So with all these services and equipment you needed, like the automatic doors and the stair lift, were there like staff that looked at you like you're high maintenance or something like that?
It wasn't the staff that looked at me differently. It wasn't that. I feel like they sometimes wasn't sympathetic to my circumstances. So there was one time my semester where, and this is another story, guys, so buckle up. I was almost towards the end, and we had to do clinicals, and you have to be on time because this is when you're doing evaluations. So you're actually evaluating a client now. So this was when I got a brand new chair, but it was acting up. Like, it would stop in the middle of the street out of nowhere for no reason. And remember, I told you I'm traveling by myself. So it stopped in the middle of the street when I was on my way to school, and someone had to get out of their car and push me onto the sidewalk. And at that time, they provided me a helper as well in the clinic because sometimes I couldn't manipulate the tools or things that I needed. Yeah. So they provided me with a helper. So he came and he pushed me up to the clinic. And I remember I missed part of the evaluation just because of what happened with my wheelchair. And we finished the evaluation. I finished the evaluation report. And when I got my grade back from my professor, I got a lower grade. So when I went to her and I asked her, why did I get a lower grade? She said, oh, it was because you were late to the evaluation class and everybody had already pitched in and did some of the work. I said, yes, but I was late due to no fault of my own. And I emailed you and I informed you of that. My wheelchair stopped in the middle of the street. This is not something I can control. She said, yes, well, I understand and I'm sympathetic to your plight, but when you get out in the workforce, your employer is not going to want to hear that you couldn't come to work because you had wheelchair issues. That sounds like a personal problem. So that's why I had to lower your grade. So I just feel like at certain times, they weren't sympathetic and really just didn't understand my plight. That kind of showed their ignorance. So it was a lot of that, and it was hard. I remember coming home many a nights crying just because I had to juggle so much and make sure at the same time that I was a great student.
That is ridiculous that they didn't want to accommodate you. And I'm sick and tired of people treating us like that. But that's what we have to go through. And I'm going to tell you a story when me and my nephews go out to a restaurant.
What happened, Louis? Story time.
So there was this time that we went to a restaurant, me and my two nephews, and the waiter, he asked what they wanted to eat. They gave their order. The waiter asked them what I like. And I told the waiter, I could tell you what I like. I have a voice of my own. So, waiter was kind of shocked. He apologized, and I gave him my order. But still, they have to stop treating us like we don't have a voice. We have a voice, and we just need to use it.
I definitely agree with you, Louis. I agree.
This whole episode actually reminds me about a poem that you wrote years ago. What was it called?
It was actually called Dear Pioneer. I can't believe you remember that.
Yeah, I think you should read it so everybody could listen because it was a great poem.
Oh, well, you are so lucky that I have it on me and it's actually on my phone. So, here it goes. Dear Pioneer, we were always taught that a pioneer means being the first to do something great that gets a top 10 rate. Dear Pioneer, that definition I just gave you above is as superficial as a dove flying high and passing by in the sky. And here's why. Because being a pioneer symbolizes something more profound. You are not just the first to do something great. You are the first to create the blueprint. You are the pillar for others to stand on. You are the first to set the path for others to follow. And if one of the others gets off track, you take them by the hand and bring them back. You are a leader and you must lead. Trust me, you are doing a good deed. How do I know? Because I am a pioneer. Dear Pioneer, you don't know it yet. People will not dare say you are a pioneer. It just has a certain air to it. People will be flustered but mustered up attempts to find solutions to the problems. At first you won't mind being a pioneer. However, over time you will become tired of creating those blueprints, becoming the pillar and setting those paths, and you just want to be fired from this job. Asking God, why can't you just follow someone else's path for once? Because you are just so tired of creating the blocks for the flocks of others that will follow. You don't want to go through the trials and tribulations. You just want things to be easy peasy for once. You deserve that, right? Because with all of your might, you are a pioneer that put up a long and arduous fight. A break is all you ask for. Before that mask and shield of strength begins to break. But newsflash, pioneers don't get breaks. Dear Pioneer, here's why. Because through your blueprints and paths, laid along the way, there are stories. Stories that at times may not brighten your day. But hey, they say another man's pain is someone else's gain. And that is what you do, Pioneer. Through you, people can gain hope. You are someone's inspiration. You are the catalyst for motivation. When the tunnel seems dark, you give that beam of light needed to see and make it to the end of the meandering tunnel. At times, you may ask yourself, well, where's my help? Make no mistake about it, you are not doing this by yourself. God is with you through every tunnel, helping you create those blueprints and pillars with the cards you've been dealt. Dear Pioneer, you may not know it yet, but you have the job of being that blueprint, that pillar, that light that fights for and guides others, the very important job of being a pioneer.
Wow, that is incredible. I think the part that sticks out to me is when you say another man's pain is someone else's gain, and that just matches you because that means you were meant to be a pioneer. Your pain, your struggle that you had to go through will open doors for people with disabilities in the future. So it just matches you. So I think that's awesome.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome.
time, guys. It's time for the quote of the episode. And Lewis is going to leave us with the quote of the episode.
So, the quote of the episode is, don't judge a book by its cover.
And that's why I started this podcast in the first place, because I wanted to bring awareness and let people who are able-bodied see that we are people too. And just like you wouldn't judge someone else, don't judge us either. So thank you for being here with me today, Lewis.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for listening. You guys are amazing because we have over 200 downloads. So this thing is just skyrocketed in less than a month. It will make a month on May 16th, my 1 month anniversary. So excited for that. You guys have been amazing. Keep sharing, keep subscribing. You subscribe by hitting that little plus button in the left hand corner of all your streaming platforms. Let us know what you want to hear. And if anybody else out there who is ably different has a story to share, please share it with us at queensontheroad.podcast@gmail.com. That again is queensontheroad.podcast@gmail.com. Again, you guys are amazing, and thank you so much. We're rolling out.
Subscribe, like, and share. Smash that like button.